If you think NFTs, virtual reality, blockchain, crypto are all a waste of time, then let me tell you that you're very much mistaken. These emerging technologies have all got one thing in common: to be disruptive. And it's not just me that thinks that. Gartner predicts that by 2026, 15% of people will spend at least an hour a day in the metaverse. HSBC, MasterCard, and Wells Fargo have just announced a project to create a digital dollar on the blockchain. And global consumer brands like Nike, Starbucks, Pepsi, and McDonald's have all launched NFT collections to build loyalty amongst customers. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to emerging technologies becoming mainstream, this is something that happens over time. It's an evolution, not a revolution. The point is that the clues about tomorrow's world are in front of us today. That's why I track 250 global brands and all of their projects in emerging technology. But I'll tell you more about that after we've heard from my guest. Paul Armstrong is the founder of Hereford, a consultancy that helps clients see around the corner. And they've worked with the likes of Meta, 20th Century Fox, and Experian. They run an annual conference called TBD, which stands for Technology, Behavior and Data. And tickets are on sale now for the next one in the new year. See the comments. They publish 2 weekly newsletters as well. One is on emerging tech and the other is on everything that Amazon have done that week. But the reason I wanted to chat with Paul is about his new book called Disruptive Technologies. It comes out in January and I wanted to get his perspective on what's going on in emerging tech. Now, we started in crypto. In the wake of the FTX collapse and the numerous cries of crypto scams and Ponzi schemes and Emperor's New Clothes and all of that, I asked Paul what he made of crypto and where he saw the crypto space heading in light of all these recent developments.
Got a lot of love for crypto. I think the underlying technology, blockchain and that sort of stuff is obviously incredibly powerful, one of the world's sort of disruptive forces. That's why I put it in the book. The FTX one, it was a big, that's why it sort of made most sense. But also as details emerge, and I'm sure you've read the New York Times article that came out, it just seems to be a bit fraudulent, that sort of thing. I think it's quite interesting how it's gone down and sort of does it and that sort of thing. I've always said to people, if you can afford to lose money, go into crypto and that sort of stuff. If you can't afford to avoid it by all costs and that sort of stuff. It's just not the playground for everyone to sort of play in. Will it be in the future? Yeah, I think it will sort of even out. We're very well, they are very much learning at the moment what works, what doesn't work, and you are seeing a lot of people who rushed in, tried to make money quickly and haven't quite figured out sort of like how to do it well, a lot legally and that sort of thing. But it all comes down to the virtual nature of it, doesn't it, really? When you see, you know, it's like having a run on a bank in a physical world, you know, if it's self-fulfilling prophecies and that sort of thing. That's exactly what happened here. People lost faith and then people pulled out and then that self-enforced different bits and bobs. But essentially, I think the one thing to take away from it, it's the worst ever event that's ever happened. So to give it some context, if that makes sense, there's been a lot of issues with crypto around the years. This is by far the worst one, isn't it? It just goes to sort of show that there's a lot of proof of concept around, and that's great. There's a lot of things that are very successful, made a lot of people a lot of money. I still think the whole cryptocurrency market is woefully undiverse and suffers a lot from bro culture and just people who are hucksters, really, who are shilling their own stuff to make them rich and make you poorer. You know, people do say a lot of pyramid schemes and that sort of stuff, and you can see it. You can see how they've got to that sort of point of view. There are some very interesting projects out there as well, but the FTX one last week really sort of, you know, yet again showed that, like, this isn't fully baked, you know.
And just to clarify, you said Huckster and not a lot of Hucksteps.
No, yes, Huckster, not Huckstep. Sorry, apologies. Yeah, do you get that a lot?
Well, no, funny enough. I mean, just as like people do ask me what the origins of the name, and I always just say, well, you know, we started out as, you know, hucksters in the Wild West. But anyway, we'll get distracted. Yeah, I mean, for me, the kind of the FTX thing. I mean, you know, there's a whole load of stuff that's still going to continue coming out, and it just seems as though underneath this $30-odd billion valuation was, you know, a Ponzi scheme, a pyramid scheme, scams, and all kinds of like unsavory stuff. And I'm sure it's going to do the industry great harm. But for me, the more kind of like longer term kind of conversation comes out, which is that if crypto is going to survive, if we look at what was the point of crypto, it was in essence this kind of decentralized world. The idea was that you and I would be the custodians of our own money. And yet we've ended up in this world when we've got a Binance or a Coinbase or an FTX, where we've got a centralized exchange who are kind of like custodians of our cryptocurrency. And then it turns out they were going off, well, in the case of FTX, allegedly, are doing things with depositors, retail investors, assets that they shouldn't have done. And that wouldn't have happened in a traditional custodial bank in a fiat world. And I think, but for me, it raises the questions of, is there really a role for a centralized exchange in a decentralized cryptocurrency world? And I think that's a debate which is going to come out, because I'm sure when Bitcoin came out, the intention was that actually it was people's money. The idea was that you didn't need banks and financial institutions and all that kind of stuff, because it's very complicated, because it is money and it's regulated and or unregulated. But if you look more, kind of more broadly, because I think we can, there's loads of people doing the full sort of autopsy on the FTX thing. But I mean, where do you, if we kind of broaden it out into what I would call more of the Web3 space, you've got NFTs, you mentioned blockchain. I like you, I'm a fan of blockchain. You've got, your decentralized finance kind of stuff. But more broadly, where do you see the Web3 thing going? Not necessarily just around FTX.
Yeah, no, I'm a big proponent of Web3. It's still very early days. A lot of, hucksters out there and that sort of thing, shilling stuff that is not quite fully baked. But there's a lot of experimental stuff going on, and that's what I kind of like. When I was asked to update the book, I said, "Oh, well, these are what I'm thinking." They were like, "Yep, bang on where we want," and that sort of stuff. So the two new chapters that we put in the book are Metaverse and Web3. When you think of what Web3 at its core offers, which is sort of like the best of both worlds, no one massively in control, sort of being able to sway stuff, you can say it is fixing a lot of the problems that we perceive to be out there. Some real, some not. But when you look at it from a perspective of like how quickly it's going to come in, I always say, like, you can imagine you've got Google, Facebook, all these massive companies. I'm like, they are huge companies that are going to look to protect their income streams, futures, and that sort of stuff. They're not ignoring Web3, but they are sitting pretty on a ton of cash, and they don't need those disrupted, do they? So I would assume it's introduction into the world is going to be slow, but it will be steady, and it will be done by people who are innovative. Those not hackers, but the interested parties of the web, shall we say?
Sure, yeah.
And those sorts of people who like playing around and seeing what can happen from things. And that's quite nice. That's when you think about it, Web 1 was in the very early days, people sort of messing around, seeing what put together. From an organizational perspective, DAOs and that sort of stuff, they offer phenomenally interesting elements to businesses that simply weren't around. So you and I could, for example, own or part own the new version of Coke that we want to create, and then get Coke to fund and market and that sort of thing. So there's lots of opportunities for it. Nothing's written in stone yet, and I think that's the great thing. But when you think about the opportunities, because the blockchain is so stable and hackable, unhackable, strong term, but pretty robust. Some notable exceptions recently, but I think that's the sort of win for it. It's like more of those services being created for people by people that use them, and I think that's the win for a lot of new technologies and emerging services out there, that those can be pretty robust, and well used. Why not? I'm very much for. We need more innovation in the web. We need more experimentation. And I think Web3 offers both of those things.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I mean, the NFT thing is interesting for me because, if I break it down, I think there's a whole topic of conversation around blockchain, but I'm particularly fascinated by NFTs because, well, I now know what the word fungible means, and it was not. It was
a good one. Yep.
It was not a word I'd ever used before at the beginning of last year. We forget that although NFTs as a term have been around probably about 6 or 7 or 8 years, I think, when it was first kind of discussed as a way of as a mechanism for having a digital record, but it's really kind of come in the last couple of years, and it was driven off the back of all of this nonsense around art and stuff. But actually, I see real utility in NFTs. I'm more interested in NFTs. It
doesn't have to just be art.
Yeah, I'm much more interested, Paul, in NFTs as tickets. Right. I like. I've just written a load of stuff around some of the cities that are using NFTs, where they're able to generate, funds from residents, and then give them essentially a smart contract in the form of a non-fungible token, and in return for whatever money they've put in, they can fund that. Money can be used to fund art projects or ways to make the community better. So the local authority can use those to generate funds for things which they can't afford out of their sort of traditional local tax-based budgets or government grants. But also then they can use the smart contracts to manage benefits. So you could use your NFT to get your free bus passes or 50% access to the local theatre and stuff like that. So I see real utility around that kind of NFT stuff, and that's actually probably the area that excites me the most, because I think there's something quite enduring about NFTs. You talk about in the book, which we'll come on to in a second, but you've kind of got a Web3 element. I mean, what are the subjects that you're really focused on from a Web3? What if you was to break it down into like elements? Where do you see that? The move coming from, which bit
by far and away it's smart contracts. At the moment we've got very rudimentary ones that sort of are working at the moment, but you've also got some apps where people are doing new types of mortgages using them, and that's that sort of area, and that's quite good because what it does is it reduces friction, reduces red tape, reduces people's sort of fear of things, and that's what I kind of love with technologies that work and are here for helping people. So for me, the smart contract is the sort of win. Once you get that down, then you can start creating layering up on all of those. Anything above that is usually you can go, it's nice to have, it's not integral. But once you've got really good contracts, you can start to build businesses, services, things that real people sort of need in order to increase their lives, maybe new revenue streams and that sort of thing. But those smart contracts, those ability to say if A and B, then you get C, that is for me perfect. It not only disrupts obviously just the way things are built, but also other services, legal systems and that, they're still going to be needed, but just not to do like grunt work and things like that. Frees up to think differently and that sort of stuff. So I'm very interested in that sort of area really for the main NFTs. Great fun. Most of it's all in art, but again, at its heart, really just a smart contract.
Yeah, okay. So let's move on a bit then. So to what I would call the immersive technology space, which is broadly called the Metaverse now, but it's actually more than that, because it's virtual reality, it's augmented reality, it's more of this immersive experience thing. I mean, what's your top line take on this? When people come and pay for your opinion on all this kind of emerging stuff, and I know you do a lot of work with corporates and stuff. I mean, what are you saying to the executives when they come to you, Paul, and they say, Metaverse, really? Should we be doing this? Is this of interest to us? What's the story with Metaverse? What do you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, you have to show them what's out there, right? That's the sort of key, because you can't just talk this stuff or like show them a picture. You have to immerse yourself. So number one, get yourself accounts on everything, right? Whether you go on there 5 minutes a day, no minutes a day, you've got to have accounts. You've got to know exactly what it works. What's your use that word before, fiat system? What's your fiat system in that sort of stuff? The majority of the metaverse at the moment is gaming, so you have to show them both sides of it from a utility perspective, where people are creating new factories to figure out how to put machines in certain areas, and then they can figure out, oh, actually that configuration doesn't work, let's try that, yep, it's more effective. Then they actually build one in the real world. That's utility metaverse, right? When you show the gaming ones, again, they can be fun. They can, you can say people are like, and what about if they had a hoodie with your logo on it and it was virtual, all that sort of. You've shown them the spectrum. Once you've shown them the spectrum, you can start saying, right, now you know what you've got. Let's talk about what jobs you have to do. And you go back to disruption theory and say, what are the jobs you have to do? And once you do that, you can quite quickly, for most, I would say 9 out of 10 brands straight away go, we should be focusing on other things. But that's right now. In the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see metaverses be increasingly adopted, interesting from multiple angles, not only from AR headsets that are coming out. We've got Apple's probably next year. Amazon's coming out with glasses, which are going to have Alexa and AR. We've got Samsung working on stuff behind the scenes. And we obviously have Meta Quest Pro, which has just been launched, which no one can afford. Once you've got those ones, it'll be quite interesting to sort of see those realms and worlds that come out. Are we all just going to create new offices so that we can work in coffee shops? I mean, I would. Why not? It's not a terrible use of my time to have a park and an office where I can work anywhere. But the utility side of it, as I mentioned, that factory or having a dance or figuring out and teaching people choreography all over the world, that could work as well. It comes down to two things. Number one, numbers of sensors on the body. Like, does it accurately show my arms and legs? At the moment, it doesn't. meta worlds, but it will. And the other one is it safe for people? That's the other arc. And after you've got those two elements pretty much down, you can really start to create things and sort of thing. Really, and Elon Musk's finding this in the great wide world of Twitter, verification is the important. There is a fantastic book by Tracy Follows, digital identity, basically. That's what she writes about. Will your digital identity survive the 21st century? It's amazing sort of read about where robotics is going, who verifies the verifiers, and that sort of thing. And that is absolutely integral when it comes to metaverse, because if you can be anyone and anything like that, that's a problem. That's both an opportunity and a problem, because you need to know that you're dealing with X, Y, and Z. But then you factor in blockchain into that and go, do you need as much trust as you needed? Because if A and B happen, C happens, and that's that's where the fun stuff sort of comes into it. And when you explain it in sort of like low level language, which I've sort of got to probably medium to top level language, what I just said, they get it, and you can really help them understand. But that's why I wrote the book, TBD. I have seen so much innovation been wasted, so much time, energy, money been wasted throughout my career on various elements, whether I'm working in-house at an agency or for a client, all because we didn't agree up front what would happen if we got to a certain level of agreement and that sort of stuff. So that's what we do up front in the TBD framework. So yeah, that for me is why, and how I talk to people. I try and break it down, talk in simple language, and then say, if this happens, let's do this. What do you think? And that sort of thing.
Got it. And apart from, Zuckerberg's garnered all of the headlines because he kind of thrust the metaverse into the public domain just over a year ago when he pivoted Facebook. And there's lots of views as to whether that's been a good, bad, or indifferent decision. I mean, certainly the share price would tell a story that it's been a bit of a disaster and he's losing loads of money. But Facebook is a cash cow at the end of the day. I mean, it's probably, we're not going to write social media off just yet, and it's still making a huge amount of cash, which he can continue to pour into the metaverse sinkhole for a few more years before that he'll probably outlast Elon Musk anyway when it comes to Twitter. But I mean, who else would you look for? I mean, if it's not them, I mean, you mentioned Apple. I mean, I think we've all been waiting for the Apple glasses, and the expectation is that once they create the device, then they will boss it. But I mean, is there anybody else? I mean, who would you say are the people to watch?
I always say Apple's great. They unlock the door. Like if you look at Western use of QR codes, it didn't happen until Apple devices could do it. And they only had the other half of the billion people that were out there. It wasn't like they brought another 6 billion on. It was like they just had the other billion. You got Android and for Apple, right? And that sort of thing. So Apple's the great unlocker. Apple tend to be owned by richer people. Why? Because they're more expensive. Apple tend to be more design conscious. Why? Because they're more design led, and that sort of thing. And it's more of a status symbol than any other Android device. You meet Android device users and they'll be like, oh yeah, let me just volumetrically capture this, then I'll do some animation with it and do this. And you try and do that on an iPhone, you're looking 3 hours. In Android, you 50 minutes. The utility versus the sort of like design and that I find absolutely fascinating. I often just find myself switching between iPhones and Androids and that sort of stuff, just to see how it all works differently. And it's eye-opening the amount you can do on Android devices and the speed at which you can do it compared to an iPhone is absolutely staggering. But I find when you're sort of looking at the future of when it comes to devices, Apple's still by far and away, people salivate over them, the media loves them. Why? Because they're status symbols, that's all. That's fine. It's fine to have a status symbol. When it comes to technology, do they have a great history in immersive technology? Not as far as I know, that sort of thing. So we'll find out. It could be a terrible product. They very rarely release a duff product, and if it is, it's not an expensive one. That's what I have found in previous design cycles. But what's quite interesting from an Apple's perspective when you look at them is just simply how much people will make it work because they've spent so much money on it.
Sure.
That's a potential as well.
Yeah. All right, I'm with you on that one. I have to say, I must admit, I'm looking forward to seeing the Apple device and what they're going to come up with it. Look, I want to move on now because we've got a short amount of time. AI. And particularly, it's a huge area, but I wanted really to focus on.
We are going around the houses today, aren't we?
Yeah. Look, Paul, I got you for half an hour. I'm going to get my money's worth. That's that big brain of yours. Look, I want to talk about specifically the AI generated content space. So we've got everything from AI writing tools to, AI generated art to AI music to deep fakes. I mean, there's a whole kind of broad spectrum, and we've kind of barely got used to GPT-3, and GPT-4 is kind of on its way, and it's going to be even bigger and brighter and better and all that kind of stuff. I mean, where do you see all of this going? And particularly this kind of question of, can machines really replace humans when it comes to creativity? I mean, there's a kind of for me, I distill a distinct differentiate between information and like creativity. And as someone who writes, you write prolifically as well. I kind of like, there's a bit of me which doesn't want to feel like whatever I've got, could be replaced by a machine. I mean, where do you see all of this heading? I mean, are we going to, do ourselves out of a role as humans?
No, I don't think so. It's very hard for a lot of computers to do things that we do. Equally, it's a lot easier to have computers do things that we don't want to do. So when it comes to helping people be better writers, there's stuff out there now that can do it. Grammarly, Hemingway, loads of apps and that thing.
Yeah.
And they don't have much AI in the way of AI. It's just rules, like grammar rules and that sort of stuff. When you factor in the element of AI, machine learning mainly it is at the moment, you could argue, are they creative? Not really. They're just literally looking at previous examples and working through different elements and trying to figure out, is he trying to say this? Is he talking about ants or umbrellas? And that sort of thing. And that's where we are. Creativity wise, I mean, again, you look back and it's only going from what it's been fed in, right? If it's fed in rubbish, it will feed out rubbish. Until we get to that stage where feed in rubbish comes out Picasso, that's the issue where people are sort of like finding it. And we are decades away from that. That's the issue. It's going very fast, going very interesting. But at the moment, AI, art, AI, authors and that sort of stuff, they're very, very early days. They can obviously help you. And maybe for me, the idea is, can they help me spark an idea? Can they help me critically think about something? So if I put down this and it's reading it and goes, oh, but Paul, actually, they didn't see that and they meant this. What do you think now? Do you think you should change this? That's quite an interesting, helpful thing, maybe, but also at the same time, decades away.
Yeah. I'm kind of with you. I certainly like the prompts, and a friend of mine who I recommended an AI tool to them. They rewrote a press release using a tool, and it just was quicker for them.
Yeah.
But to me, it is the prompts. It's the kind of, that writer's block moment where you just think, oh, what, for some reason it just doesn't spark. And then all of a sudden the AI tool can give you 10 different things as suggestions. And you kind of, okay, it's just come up with them because a machine doesn't get writer's block in that way. Yeah, I got it.
I wrote a piece for Forbes. It must have been like 4 or 5 years ago now. And I gave it 3 prompts for bullets. And I said, I want to write about, and I can't remember what it was, future of work or automation or whatever it was. And the 3 bullet points, and it came back with an article, and it was perfectly readable. And I changed top and tail a little bit, put it at the bottom of like, by the way, this was written by this computer, and that was 5 years ago. So I'm imagining they've gotten a little bit better than that. But at the same time, it was very low level stuff. It wasn't particularly thrilling, didn't really grip the reader. But again, if it gets me 80% and I add 20% of the magic, maybe that's enough. There are calls on journalists and calls on writers at the moment to just churn out stuff. But I always argue that's not the problem you need to fix. You need to fix Google requiring input every day so that they think you're still relevant. The argument is, be relevant, but you don't have to turn out something every day. That's a lot of work just to stay relevant,
Yeah.
Get people to follow you.
Yeah, got it. All right. So as you say, it's a whistle stop tour. Right, let's talk about the most important part of the conversation, which is my
birthday. No.
Is it your birthday?
No. I would just say it's the most important day for anyone, but no.
The second most important day is going to be the launch of the book, which I think is the second generation of the book. It's called Disruptive Technologies. So if anybody that doesn't know about the book, what is it? What's it about, and who's it for?
Sure. The book is for anyone, but any exec, but mainly sort of senior execs who are in charge of budgets, decision making, or leadership. It's an in-depth look into the 5 key technologies that will and continue to disrupt the world we live in. So listing those off: AI, nanotech, 3D printing, blockchain, and holography, or all the immersive tech that we just described and that sort of stuff. Talk about pros and cons, key player information, the projections where they're going. But more importantly, the book contains the framework TBD: technology, behavior, and data. And the idea behind that is that essentially it helps people slide innovation through companies. And I've done it multiple times with people from Coca-Cola to brand new startups. And the idea is that everybody stops before they come up with any ideas or anything like that. And they agree from 0 to 30, what happens if an idea that we have gets a score of 15, right? Or 20, or whatever you want. It can be 1 for every one of 30. But the idea is if you can count to 30, you can do it. Once you've agreed all those levels, so it might be at number 5, we do a maximum £5,000 study to determine the relevancy of this, and the report must be written in 24 hours, right? It can be as specific as that. The idea is to be as specific as possible. And then you go through the process of TBD. So that's what I've just described is called a decision matrix, where you decide what to do if when. Then you go through and you start ranking 3 big questions, right? So can people do what you're asking? Will people do what you're asking? And the third one, will enough people do what you're asking? All right, that really is TBD in a nutshell. You go through a big rigmarole of like looking for data, asking people and that sort of stuff. And then you give each of those questions a score out of 10. So that's how you get your score of 0 to 30. And then once you've decided what you get, you then activate based on what you've decided up front. So the idea is that you fight up front on everything, and then you know where you're going to get and where you end up. And then people vote at the end of like what you want to do, but you've actually got the number that you can work on. So again, your decisions to what to do next are kind of already created. So it's much faster to get stuff put through. Aside from that, they've got a much more detailed version to then decide how much level of investment you should give, and that brings in more people in the organization, much more robust process. And then at the end of it, there are other chapters. So we've got the new ones, Web3, Metaverse, and we also have information and chapters on aging populations of the workforce and how they both will need different types of change, talk to them in different ways. We also have pitfalls. What else have we got in the book?
There's so much,
how to get the biggest one, how to get sign off. That's the biggest one. That's the hardest one, isn't it? If you actually need a terrible thing called money and like investment in things, there's a great chapter on there. And I spoke to many, many smarter people than I of how they've done it to get money from people. And it's a really, really good read. So if I would say so myself. But,
Good. Well, look, what I'll do is I'll put links in the comments. So anybody, you know, when somebody's interested, I'll put links in the comments of where they can find the book, which I get, but I guess it's going to be on Amazon and all major book retailers that you can buy online. And it comes out in January. Is that right, Paul?
It does, yeah. Available for pre-order. You've got Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart. They're all up at the moment, but obviously it's pretty much anywhere where good books are sold. So they all work from a couple of repositories these days. Got
it. All right. So final question. So you've got to imagine now that we're 5 years out. Okay, so you and I, we've reconvened. It's 2027, 2028.
Yeah. So I'll be what, 31? Okay,
yeah. You'll be 31 and I'll just be a couple of years behind you.
Yeah,
and exactly. We're recording an anniversary show basically, and it's going to be okay. So Paul, I'll remind you of what you said 5 years ago. What are we going to be saying about crypto in 5 years, and the metaverse in 5 years, and AI in 5 years?
So I think AI, my hope for it at least, will be that AI helps education and it helps build on the systems we already have to course correct a lot of what we can do, but also help people later on when they want to retrain and that sort of thing. I think AI has got a real part to sort of play to help people understand and then make decisions based on data, but also, you might think you want to do this, but actually these things say this. What do you think about X? I think they've got lots of potential to do that. From a metaverse perspective, again, could also help education. Imagine being taught in the world's best, most beautiful, most awe-inspiring buildings, but the ones I see built at the moment are 4 walls with a window that has a field that you want to be in the field, not in the room. Imagine if you made the rooms like a massive, beautiful, like just, I don't know, heavenly, beautiful, architecturally stunning building that you walked around, you did experiments and that sort of stuff. No one's making that, and I don't know why. It's killing me. I keep looking green shoots in it. Crypto, I think, will have, we're in a winter, aren't we, at the moment? I think that will continue for a while. Everyone's poor because of different things around the world. But the idea is essentially that the underlying technology still works. We need people to sort of figure out where that's sort of going. So I think in 5 years, we're going to see a lot more businesses built on DAO, and they'll actually work. At the moment, we're not quite seeing that. There's lots of rough edges to sort of smooth out. But I think we'll start seeing possible public services be pushed into DAOs and that sort of thing. So helping people, more sensibly organize and decide where money goes and how it's sort of spent. That seems like a smart way away. I think energy is my other big one. In 5 years, I think, the war that that Russia's waging at the moment, I think has given a shock to everyone. And we need to start figuring out a bit more. So in 5 years, I would be very, very surprised if Russia has the same stranglehold on our energy that it has now.
Sure. And hopefully, Paul, we will be less dependent on fossil fuels anyway. And so that, the ability to be self-sufficient with wind or solar or whatever else might mean that we kind of remove that concentrated power you get there. Got it.
We have
Okay.
all the information we need at the moment. We just lack the political will.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Paul, thank you. That was great chatting to you as always, Paul. I'm a big fan of yours. Good luck with the launch of the book, and just keep me posted. I'll put all the links in the show notes, and but you have a great day, and I'll talk to you very soon.
You too. Speak soon, Rick.
Cheers, Paul.
At the start of the show, I told you that I was tracking 250 consumer brands. All of them are using emerging technologies to find new ways to engage with customers, find new ones, and build more efficient ways of working. For example, did you know that Nike sold over $180 million of Nike NFTs last year? Or that Alfa Romeo are using blockchain technology to record the ownership and history of new vehicles? Or that Accenture have onboarded 150,000 new hires using virtual reality technology? These are real life use cases, and they tell us what we need to know about tomorrow's digital world. From Adidas to Zara, from airlines to even a zoo, I've documented the projects for these 250 brands and built them into what is, I believe to be, the most comprehensive collection of brand strategies you won't find anywhere else. If you're working in the emerging tech space or investing in tomorrow's world, or simply curious and want to know what's happening and what's coming next, this collection has everything you need to know. It's built in Notion and can be accessed via any web browser. All you need is the link, which you can buy on Gumroad. The details are in the comments, or head over to this page to tell you all you need to know. Now, this is the important bit. Up until the 24th of December, you can buy lifetime access to the database for just €26. That's a 50% discount on the current price. That's because I'm still rolling it all out. But be aware, as demand goes up, so will the price. To get the 50% discount, use the code BRAND50. BRAND50. As I said, everything you need to know about brand strategies and all the links for Paul Armstrong are in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Remember to join my mailing list. Remember to check out my podcast and give me a like for this video. Thanks for watching to the end. Till next time, and remember, inside information gives you leverage.